Okay, so this isn't the type of video that I'm used to making, and it really isn't a kind of video where I ever expected to make it. But this game just it leaves a lot for me to discuss, and I just kind of had that feeling that I had to sit down in front of my computer and get all my thoughts out on it. I'm doing this completely unscripted. There's nothing in front of me, no Google Doc or anything like that. I just want to talk about exactly what my experience with Mixtape was like and how I feel about really both ends of the reception to it, be it positive or negative. Because I want to start off by saying that it's really not the worst thing in the world. It's frustrating and it misses the mark on what it's trying to do, but I have definitely had worse experiences with movies and other forms of media than I have with Mixtape. It's just frustrating at the end of the day, but it is something that I can tell had heart put into it, and I don't want to outright say this is the worst thing I've ever seen to counteract what I think is industry plant levels of positive reception to it, seeing all the 10 out of 10 reviews from game journalists and game sites is very bizarre, especially for something like this. I get the critiques where people are saying, oh, of course, the gameplay is non existent, so the journalists are going to love this. I don't really agree with that. I know there's exaggeration on that end as well. People saying, oh, you can play the whole game without hitting a button. I don't think that's true. We even tried it when we were playing it. I guess I should start with the circumstances of what led us to playing Mixtape in the first place. So, I haven't been on Twitter for, I want to say, a couple of years now. It's been a lot better for my mental health, even if I've still had struggles with that. I think it's been beneficial to me to not be in such a cesspool of discourse. So I was not privy to a lot of the negative points specifically towards Mixtape. I saw the IGN review, and I saw people disparaging that, especially when compared to other IGN reviews. But I know with indie games like this, storytelling narratives and all that, a lot of the negative reception can be boiled down to quote unquote woke trash, and that's just not something that I am perceptive to at all. I like storytelling games. I like visual novels. I think you can make a fantastic game where the only thing you have to do is click on the screen. I like visual novels, and this is sort of an extension of that, where the main point is trying to get across, or rather, the main function is that it tells a story. So I don't have a problem with the way the game itself is set up. I do have a problem with the way it injects small moments of gameplay into areas where it really does not need it. So what happened was I ultimately purchased the game for a friend, Clarence, because he said that he would only do it if someone purchased the game for him. But when I went to purchase the game, I noticed a couple things that I found interesting. I noticed mostly positive reviews on Steam, and knowing that the outspoken minority generally for storytelling indie games like this generally don't have constructive criticism to provide when they lambast these sort of games. They just call it woke trash. I didn't expect it to be horrendous. And to its credit, there are aspects of it that I like, which I will get to. But there are definitely areas where it's not fantastic. It's not a good game. And I kind of want to outline where it is, starting with the gameplay itself. As I said, it injects areas of gameplay into spots where it doesn't need it. There's these weird sequences where you do have to press buttons. You cannot get through the entire game without hitting a button. This is false, but I almost think it would be better if that was true. because some of the areas where they want you to actually interact with the game, I feel like they're just trying to make sure you're focusing on the story itself by injecting, I keep saying injecting, I'm sorry, but by adding these small bits where you do have to interact with the game, but they're so minuscule. And where visual novels tend to shine is the moments where you do interact with them, whether you're playing a mini game in them or choosing dialogue options. You affect the route. You make choices from your perspective, and it affects how the game turns out. Mixtape only has one ending, so these moments where you have to input for a secret handshake or to make your slushie or something, they don't really serve a purpose beyond forced engagement with the game itself. I think it's just because they want you to make sure that you're paying attention. We were already paying attention, I can tell you that much. We weren't paying attention for a lot of the right reasons, but we were dialed in, even if we did not like the story in any regard. So when we got to the segment where, I'm sure everyone's seen this segment at this point if you've heard the Mixtape discourse, where you are making out with someone else in a past memory, and you are controlling Stacy's tongue and just like moving it around this other kid's tongue. The kid has braces and everything. It is such an uncomfortable sequence. It's where I really think a line needs to be drawn in multiple aspects, not just for how uncomfortable that specific segment was, but really thinking about, did this need to be here? And I think the same can be said for a lot of the gameplay aspects to this game. It's like they just want some game to go along with their game, even though their main goal is to tell a story. And I think sometimes wanting to tell a story is enough. You don't have to have all this random nonsense that really clouds the game, especially because if you've seen some of these cutscenes where you can just mash buttons, like when you're jamming out in the car in that one section, and it just makes the style look really nonsensical. Like, you mash the buttons and the movement is not even anything close to within human capabilities. And for a story that wants to have that humanistic element to it, that wants to invoke nostalgia and remind people of another time, it really loses a lot. I keep going off on random tangents here because there's other elements to the game that just keep popping up into my head while I'm trying to gather all my thoughts on it. Again, I'm not doing this off a script. I'm just trying to pour all of my thoughts out onto the table here. So we purchased the game, and it opens up with the skateboarding segment, and this is another section where I'm just kind of like, do we need to really interact with this? Because the only time we had to press a button was to avoid this one car. For most of the initial course, we were just moving down the hill without needing to input anything. The game steers your skateboard back onto the road for you. And this could have been fine if there was anything to actually do with the skateboards. All you can really do is jump, ollie, and move. There isn't anything like a trick system or anything like that, and I get that that's sort of probably really difficult to implement, but there's like guardrails, there's cars to jump over, there's something there that could have been genuinely engaging instead of just making you go through the motions while the characters spout off this corny dialogue that you're essentially forced to listen to, because if you take your hands off the controller, you're not going to get anywhere for a while. You're going to keep bumping into that car, and the game's not going to actually steer for you. You have to do something to progress. And the characters themselves really aren't anything to write home about, especially not Stacey Rockford, who might just be one of the most insufferable protagonists that I've ever had the displeasure to experience the perspective of. she is so goddamn pretentious and really is an extension of the mood of the game as a whole. She is pretentiousness incarnate. She has these ideal dreams and everything that she's more than willing to completely leave behind her home, her family, and friends for, essentially cutting them off. The whole first portion of the game is reminiscing through these photos and everything, while Stacy is effectively saying, I'm never going to have anything like this again. And I get that the culture of the 90s was idealism. I was born in 1999. I'm not a 90s kid by any stretch of the imagination. I remember a few things that were present in MIXTAPE, a few pieces of technology, but I didn't grow up with all of them. But from my understanding, the culture surrounding this time period was anything you want to do, you can do. And to Stacy's credit, one of the things I really do like about this game, I'm offering up a positive viewpoint here. I think the musical tracks that were curated for this game to tell the story and invoke certain moods, or at least attempt to invoke certain moods, the song choices are phenomenal. The soundtrack works incredibly well with what the game wants to go for, with what it wants you to feel. Because even if I don't relate to these characters and I don't have those emotions and I kind of just want the game to get over, the music matches what the tone is attempting to do really well. So there is the fact that Stacy is genuinely good at picking out music, and she probably would be a successful music producer. The way she goes about this, though, is just so irritating. There's nothing to latch onto. There's barely any sense of remorse, or, well, remorse is a strong word, but like second guessing herself. She is so obnoxiously confident that she's just going to New York and make it big, especially when her home is gorgeous. Her parents are happy and supportive. She has a good life that she could go back to if her dreams of becoming a music producer don't pan out. But she doesn't even stop to consider this a possibility, and she continually throws her friends under the bus, effectively saying, I am never going to see you people again, and I am not going to give a shit about that fact because I am going to be living it up in the Big Apple. Like, there's no semblance of anything to really latch onto with this character. There's no emotion she exhibits for most of the game beyond confidence that is just excessive to an annoying degree, and it just does not stop. Paired with some of the most atrocious dialogue ever, especially when the songs are introduced, she looks directly at the camera and she has to go off on these tangents about the history behind all these songs, and it is just so pace-breaking. Anything the game wants to build up during these moments is ruined by this obnoxious brat staring at you and just telling you something that about each song that you, to be fair, probably didn't know about. But we don't need to know about it for the song to accomplish what it sets out to do. It's about tone. And while the tone could have been great if these songs were just allowed to play, having these breaks in the story to shatter the fourth wall and kind of look down on the player by essentially saying, yeah, we know so much more about music than you do, it just does not lend itself to a good story. And the story itself just does not work either. Again, I do not like Stacy, but I think this could have worked better if she was ultimately taken down a peg. Everything bad that happens to her in the story is the direct cause of her being a delinquent for no reason beyond 90s punk culture. She has a good home life from everything we can tell. She has a supportive family. Why she is so embedded in punk culture, besides it's cool, is never explored if there is a reason for it. And not only is she doing this mindlessly, but she's roping other people into this. And it especially affects Cassandra, who honestly gets so much more dimension as a character than Stacy could ever dream of. And it sucks because the way the story handles Cassandra isn't good either. And then Stacy has her sidekick Slater, who really doesn't get anything. We hear like 3 lines of dialogue from his mom, who I guess is also into drugs and stuff, and is kind of like the cool mom. So it kind of establishes why Slater is the way he is, but we don't get anything more to him. He doesn't bounce off any of the other characters well. So much of this dialogue just feels forced, and it's not just the writing, but also the way it's delivered. I don't feel like the voice actors have any confidence in the script, and I'm not trying to disparage them. I just don't think the writing is good enough to warrant any sort of positive reception, whether it's internally or externally. It's so cringe. I don't have another word to describe this, and I don't like saying the word cringe anymore to describe something because it just feels so half-baked, like you're not providing an argument. But there are so many sections of dialogue where it's just either obnoxious references or just Stacy putting someone down for no reason that just makes me revile in frustration. It's not fun to follow these characters around, and ultimately Cassandra is only there because her dad, the police officer, doesn't like them, which I don't like them. It's insane that the story wants to paint Officer Marino to be the bad guy here for keeping Cassandra quote-unquote sheltered. But he's going out of his way to pay for her college and just trying to keep her as a good person. He's not being overbearing just because he grounds her and stops her from going to this big blow-up party where there's going to be drugs and alcohol for people who are underage. Keep in mind, these kids are coming just out of high school, and they're into the sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture that was prevalent at the time. You should not be doing this when you are explicitly stated to be a 17-year-old. There's a line where Officer Marino finds, I almost forgot her name there for a second, Stacy drinking outside of the 7-Eleven, and he outright says, this is honestly one of my favorite lines in the game. It's, I know math isn't your strong suit, but 17 isn't 21. But they go out of the way to establish multiple times that this is not something these kids should be doing. They're going to continue to do it, and it just delivers this constant middle finger to Officer Marino. And it culminates in one of the worst dialogue exchanges I think I've ever seen in a video game. It ends with Cassandra confronting her father in the forest as their hangout spot is burning down due to negligence, making it look like she has committed an act of arson by holding her torchlighter. And from what I can recall, she says, "This isn't a catastrophe, it's a warning. This is only the beginning of my wicked ways." And it's just delivered with all the confidence of someone who's there for the paycheck. It is so bad. And for some reason, the officer, straight-laced officer, who's had like maybe 2 or 3 interactions with these kids where they could have been anywhere close to seeing eye to eye, lets her go, despite the fact that even if he knows that she didn't burn down the building, she has violated her curfew to go drinking and doing drugs at this party. It doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no reason that little heart-to-heart he had with Stacy outside of the 7-Eleven should have been enough for him to go back on his virtues like that. And I'm not saying I wanted the game to end with Cassandra getting the shit can and Stacy to just fuck off to New York with zero resolution. But it doesn't make sense. The story in so many places and so many ways does not make sense. Like, people can talk about the shopping cart sequence and all that, but that was really the nail in the coffin for me, was just this half-baked resolution where the one character with any sort of scruples turns back on it for reasons beyond human comprehension. That's really all I have to say about the story, I think. A lot of it is just reminiscing in these strange, drug-trippy scenarios and doing the bare minimum for gameplay, which, again, I don't necessarily think is a detriment. Some of my favorite games of all time, you just click and read text boxes. But beyond that, it's just them planning to break her out of the house, go to this party, do bad things that bad people do, and it's frustrating. It's just 3 hours of frustrating lack of character development, lack of comeuppance. There's nothing here. It's just a story. It's not a coming-of-age story. It's a story, and a very ham-fisted one at that. And when your main goal when making this game is to tell a story, I can't forgive everything that I just laid out on the table here. I can forgive some of the bad gameplay elements if the story is good, but almost nothing about the game is good. And that's really where I'm just baffled by the positive critical reception to this. And I think that sentiment is shared by the people I played the game with. The most engagement we actually got out of it was this random sequence where we were just skipping stones across the river, trying to knock out every object on a rock, or trying to get it into the inner tube. That was the most entertainment we got out of MIXTAPE. And it comes during a section where Stacy is, in typical fashion, throwing her friends under the bus. So the dialogue attached to it is just not fun to sit through either. My throat is getting really dry, so I kind of have to wrap this up here soon. But for a 3-hour game with a bad story, it doesn't give me much to talk about. But I do want to end on another good note. The style of the game itself, the art direction. I have seen mixed opinions on this. I personally think it's really good. I like the art direction a lot. It kind of gives me the vibes of like Spider-Verse or a Laika movie, obviously not being in contention in the story department with Laika or Spider-Verse, but it's reminiscent of that. It looks unique. And I think it's fun when an indie game strives to have a different style. Some of the backdrops are stunning. There's a section where they're walking through the forest and they come out on this clearing, and there's this hill just draped in trees and the sun's beaming down. You get a gorgeous view of this landscape. And that shot right there had me like, okay, I am in love with the style of this game. I love how it looks. It was immediately ruined by a gameplay sequence where you are just practically jumping in zero gravity for no reason, and the character movement looks so stiff and awkward while still being too fluid somehow. But the background was very nice. And I do think it comes back to just a lot of the gameplay segments not needing to be there. I wish I could say that there were enjoyable gameplay elements to it. I wish we could have done more with the skateboards. I wish you could have done more with the shopping cart section. I wish the game required genuine engagement. It's not the worst game I have ever seen or the worst game I have ever played. It is in a really low tier, though. And I'm more annoyed by the fact that there's so much missed potential for something good here. I genuinely believe MIXTAPE could have been good, especially because the main aspect of what it is trying to accomplish, telling a story through a nostalgic mix of songs. The songs they picked out are pristine. They fit the tone they want to set amazingly. whoever was in charge of the soundtrack and getting the rights to the songs at the studio. And I know that's in contention too, but that's a whole can of worms that I don't want to dig up right now. But whoever curated the music for this game did a stellar job. And that's why I wanted it to be good. Because there was something there. There were people on this team that wanted to bring something good to the table. And it kind of stings to just have to say, I don't like this game, when there are elements to it that I did enjoy. That hurts worse than playing something to laugh at how bad it is, which I almost kind of expected to at a certain point, but I'm just kind of hanging my head down at this point. Like, I paid $18 for this, and it was in the ballpark of being worth it if they had just done more in the story department. I would not care about the lackluster gameplay elements if they could have just delivered a good story. That's really all my thoughts on Mixtape laid out in the open. I don't know if I plan on doing another video like this, at least not for a while, because I tend to stick to scripts. I still want to make the Grime video, especially now that Grime 2 is out and actually kind of matters to what I want to say about the original, which I didn't expect. But I want to script that one out and give that one the love that it deserves. When it comes to something like this, where I wasn't playing to hate on it, rag on it, or even get clicks on it, like, you could have seen this video and you recommended and thought, oh, he's just jumping on the Mixtape hate bandwagon, he's farming for clicks. That's really not why I wanted to get this out there. I just wanted to talk about something that I think deserves a more objective conversation, because I have seen the highest of high praises and the most abysmal ratings possible. I'm not really in the middle, because that would imply that I just kind of think the game's middle of the line. It's a bad game, but I don't think either extreme is correct here. There are some positive elements that keep it from being irredeemable in any regard. But a lot of what it wants to do, it just stumbles at. It falters at. And I can't forgive it for that. And that's ultimately why I made this video, just stream of consciousness style, reflecting on our experience with the game and anything that came to mind that I wanted to address from where I'm standing, whether I liked it or disliked it. I just wanted to do it in my own words without having to worry about filtering my thoughts. So overall, that's my thoughts on Mixtape 2026. I think it is a bad experience, but I also don't think it's the kind of experience that you purchase to laugh at for how bad it is. Because I didn't play it out of hatred or expecting it to be the worst piece of garbage I've ever seen, and it wasn't in the end. It's just not for me. I can respect that there are people that it's for. Again, I wasn't born or alive or really sentient around the time period that the game takes place in. So some people can find the story relatable. That's fantastic. I just don't. I played with other people that can't find that sense of nostalgia in it, and we really didn't enjoy ourselves. So there are so many other visual novels or games that I would recommend above this. Grime is about the same price, maybe a couple dollars extra, and tells a better story through a character that doesn't speak. Yeah, it wouldn't be a TNC video without me shilling for Grime, would it? But my throat is about shot, it's allergy season, and I think ultimately this is where I have to wrap it up. So if you watch this video and you've stuck with me to the end of my thoughts on this, thank you. I really appreciate you listening in on me really being vulnerable. This is me putting my regular thought process out there without writing anything down on a piece of paper. I'm literally just looking at the audition file right now, looking at the waveforms. That's the only thing I have in front of me. Everything I've said here is my genuine thoughts as they pop into my head through my reflection on Mixtape. So if you want more videos like this, just let me know. Otherwise, I intend to stick with the shit posts and what I want to do eventually with scripted video essays. It's just a matter of finding the proper motivation. One thing I can say about Mixtape is that it motivated me to do something. It might not make the game look good, but it stuck with me enough to make me make this. And I do find that interesting because that's something it does that a lot of games don't. But once again, thank you for joining me. I know I don't upload to this channel very often anymore, and I don't really anticipate doing so in the near future unless you really want more videos where I'm just laying all my thoughts bare on a certain subject and you find this enjoyable. I'd be extremely happy if you did. If not, just let me know. And this has been TNC. Thank you, and have a good one.